This is my audience for speech number 2, my informative speech.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Dorsey, and I'm a student at Northwestern State University. I'd like to thank you for coming out to this informative speech, and if it's okay with you, I'd like to go ahead and start it. Have you ever had a mouth-watering bowl of food so good that it makes you want to eat more? Well, you're not alone. Actually, an article called The Dietitian, Overeating and Assault on the Body by Susan Bloom says that 6 in 10 people eat more than they should, sometimes or often. Eating more than you should is also known as overeating, and overeating has both physical and mental risk associated with it. In doing research on overeating, I learned that I was actually an overeater, often binging on buffet food or eating portions larger than I should has led me to suffer from one of the risks associated with overeating. But enough about that, I'll share a little bit more later. Right now, I would like to tell you the definition of overeating, why we do it, and the risk associated with it. As I explain the topic, I'll note a few things on the board behind me so that way you can remember what we've discussed. You may think you have an understanding of what overeating is, but I would like to review the definition to kind of give you a healthier understanding. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines overeating as a verb to overeat, which was first used in 1599 and means that we eat too much or we eat more than what is considered healthy. There's also a medical definition of to overeat, which means to eat in excess. Now that we've defined what overeating is, I'm going to go to the board and write those definitions down so that way you can hang on to them throughout the conversation. So, what is overeating? Overeating is eating more than is healthy. So now that we know what overeating is, we're going to discuss why we do it. You may be thinking, why do we overeat? Well, one of the reasons we overeat is because we believe that certain foods are better than other foods. For example, we think that foods that are low in fat are better than foods that are higher in fat. But according to an article entitled 6 Bad Excuses for Overeating by Elizabeth Jenkins at health.com, this type of thinking can actually lead to overeating. In Elizabeth's article, Brian Wansink, a researcher in food psychology at Cornell University, states that people believe that low-fat foods have 44% less calories than foods higher in fat. In actuality, they have only 10% less calories. What happens is companies replace the fat in food with sugars, which in reality doesn't do much for the food. It doesn't make it healthier. But this misconception of eating healthier isn't the only reason we overeat. In Adam Campbell's article, The 6 Reasons You Overeat, he interviews Michael Russell, a PhD holder and men's health advisor, to learn that a 2013 study done by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that the lack of sleep actually caused overeating. According to this study, people that lack sleep actually eat 5% more calories daily than people who actually get adequate amounts of sleep. In other words, being too tired leads to overeating. Adam's article also states that eating out too much actually leads to overeating. Adam writes that according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or the USDA, more than 40% of meals are eaten away from home, making it harder to control the portion size, says Michael Russell, the men's health advisor. Now let's review why it is we overeat. As you can recall, I stated that we overeat because we have a misunderstanding of what healthy eating is. Another reason we do it is because we feel, sometimes we just actually feel too tired. And it causes us to consume more calories. And the final reason I discussed that we overeat is because, well, we like to eat out too much. So eating out too much is another reason why we do it. So we've talked about why we do it, but now we need to talk about some of the risks associated with overeating. According to Sarah N. Patinko, Master of Education and author of What Are the Dangers of Overeating, there are both physical and mental risks associated with overeating. One of the more noticeable physical risks associated with overeating is obesity. According to Sarah's article, when you take in more calories than your body can burn, you put on pounds. But as I mentioned, overeating isn't just it doesn't just affect you physically, it also affects you mentally. Sarah's article discussed that overeating can affect an individual's self-esteem or self-image, the way you feel and look about yourself. And to be honestly, I explained to you earlier that overeating has affected me personally. Well, last summer I went on a zip lining and whitewater rafting trip, and I was very excited about zip lining. So I went to the counter with my friends. We were all pumped up and ready to do it, and unfortunately, I was advised that I couldn't participate because I was over the weight limit. And I know that a lot of you may think that this experience isn't directly related to overeating, but if you recall, I said I love to indulge in buffets and eating large portion sizes. And those things help contribute to obesity. And of course, overeating and obesity are directly related because of that. But enough about me. Let's review the risks that I've discussed. One of the risks I discussed associated with overeating is obesity. It's when we eat too much and we put on too many pounds. The second risk associated with overeating is self-image or self-esteem. It's how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about the way we look, and overeating can really affect those things. Now that we've discussed what the definition of overeating is, why we do it, and some of the risks associated with it, we've learned that overeating can be dangerous. Actually, after listening to this information, it may be beneficial for you to remember some of these main points about overeating and why we do it and the risk associated with it. In closing, at some point in your life, you may be challenged to overeat because something's just too good to pass by. But remember, with overeating, there's consequences. Now that you're aware of those consequences, what do you plan to do the next time you're faced with a decision to overeat? Will you do it, or will you think about the dangers that you could possibly put yourself in? Thank you for coming out.